Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's a great Monday morning here on O'Connor and Company, and I appreciate you all being part of our morning routine, and thanks for letting us into your routine. It's 7:35. Trevor Matich about your first place Washington Commanders as the Burgundy and Gold dominate on the road yet again. And then at 8:05, Jerry Torres, he's hoping to dominate the congressional race against Don Beyer in Virginia's 8th. He'll join us at that time. I'm Larry O'Connor, being dominated by Julie Gunlock all morning long. But
good morning.
Sort of her thing. Julie, we have Joe diGenova here.
Yay.
And there's, I think, plenty of things to talk to him about. And Joe, good morning, first of all. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
I'd like to spin off. I don't know if you were listening, and I appreciate you do listen to this America's Morning Show wherever you are around the world. So we were just talking about the report that came out on Friday as Kamala Harris did her photo op at the border. 425,000 convicted criminals known convicted criminals who were encountered by ICE or Border Patrol that were then let free into the United States of America. 13,000 convicted murderers, 15,000 convicted rapists. Is this standard operating procedure for our border and security and immigration policies? And shouldn't the Justice Department have something to say about this? What's that handshake like when you know you've got a murderer and rapist at your border and you just let them in?
Well, this used to not be the policy of the United States, but then Biden and Harris took over and made it the policy of the United States government to not vet people properly either at the border or in foreign countries that they fly in on planes. None of those people is properly vetted because in many of the countries they're coming from, they won't share information with us, and then we don't care whether they do or not. This is an outrageous violation of U.S. sovereignty by the Biden-Harris administration. They have endangered the American people. And Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, and the silent FBI Director, Chris Wray, who has never once objected to this, they are both complicit in this, and they are responsible for the crimes being committed against Americans by these people. You know, you would think the country would be outraged by this, but the mainstream media has managed to cover it up.
Yeah.
And the American people seem to be a bit indifferent about all of this. I haven't quite figured it out yet.
I hope they're not. I think that they've made up their mind, and I know that Trump leads on border security issues by double digits, but Julie, Joe is absolutely dead on. This report, which was released Friday, it got something like 20 to 30 seconds on NBC News.
It is unbelievable.
And nothing else.
And they asked Chris Coons about this on Fox News on Sunday, and he made this bizarre statement where he said some of the 30,000 non-detained illegals who are convicted murderers and rapists aren't detained by ICE, but are in prisons and will be deported upon release. So he's trying to, I guess, comfort people by saying, oh, yeah, there were rapists and murderers let in, but most of them then committed a crime and went to American jails. So
that doesn't make me feel better.
Yeah, well, and also it's who pays for those jails, the upkeep and running of those jails.
Remember, Chris Coons is a hack. We call him the Reverend. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. I've known Chris Coons for years. He used to be the Newcastle County executive. He's a hack. He's a Biden acolyte. He pretends to be this very sophisticated, erudite person, especially on foreign policy. He's actually a know-nothing hack who is his life is nothing but pretense. But the bottom line is, he doesn't care. He's all in on the illegal immigrants coming into the country, but he does it with a smile and a soft voice, and they just love him on mainstream media for that reason. But he's a liar, and he's a good one. He's one of the best liars that the Democrats have going, but he is a hack.
Yeah, it occurred to me over the weekend, because I was watching the Michigan football game, 110,000 seats in the stadium in Ann Arbor there for Michigan. You would fill it full over 4 times to account for the number of convicted criminals Kamala Harris
Yep.
and Joe Biden have led in the last 3 years at our border.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I'd love to shift your attention to the appeal that the Trump legal team took to the New York Appeals Court over that $454 million civil fraud judgment against him. I don't know how deep into the arguments you were here, but it appears from many observers that the 5-judge panel seemed rather concerned about this judgment, the size of it, and the means in which Attorney General Letitia James brought these charges in the first place.
It doesn't sound good for Letitia James if the tone of the argument is any indication. These were 5 intermediate appeals court judges in the New York appellate system. They seem to have some rationality in their questioning. They didn't seem to be the hacks that have populated lower New York courts. They seem to be asking the right questions. They were troubled by the size of the verdict. They were troubled by the instructions that were given. They were troubled by Arthur Engoron's conclusions of himself. By the way, this was a non-jury proceeding. This was all done by Judge Engoron. They were troubled by the statute of limitations being extended to include certain things. I mean, the law was violated all along throughout this. There were no victims in this case. There were no complaints filed by any bank or financial institution, and that bothered these judges. So we'll see. We'll see whether or not that was just episodic rhapsody during oral argument, or whether or not they're going to really hit it and knock it out of the park and either reverse this or reduce the judgment to some minimalist amount because of the fact that there was no financial loss and that the marketplace was not affected in any way by any of these transactions.
Episodic rhapsody. Was that Gershwin, or was it? I can't remember.
No, that was deep. That was deep sea diving. It's when you go down in the wrong type of tank.
Finally, Joe, Jack Smith, the special counsel. You kind of impressed yourself with that one, didn't you, Joe?
Yes, I did.
Special counsel Jack Smith has now filed under seal, we're told, a legal brief that makes the case against Donald Trump pertaining to the events of January 6th. Now, the judge in that case, Ms. Chutkin, has asked for this brief. It's now been filed. What is the purpose of this, and what are the odds that this thing remains sealed and not leaked between now and Election Day? And again, the major question, what's the point? Election Day is 5 weeks away. This thing has already been pushed down because of the Supreme Court and the overreach by Jack Smith and Judge Chutkin. Nothing is going to happen with this. So why demand this, 150 or 180 page brief detailing the evidence against Donald Trump now before Election Day?
It's pure politics on the part of Judge Chutkin and Jack Smith. Here's what happened. The Supreme Court said very, very bad judging by Chutkin and the 3 judges on the D.C. Circuit Court, said sloppy work. You didn't take enough time. Chief Justice Roberts sent it back. And when the case came back to Judge Chutkin, Jack Smith re-indicted the president, trying to eliminate all the things that he thinks are covered by the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. Now, what's supposed to happen next? Is that the defense gets to examine the indictment and then file a motion to dismiss. And they have a set amount of time to do that. And their brief would be due after the election, the first brief. And Jack Smith wouldn't be allowed to file anything. So Jack Smith says, oh, no, I want to file my response now before the defendants file their motion to dismiss, completely out of order, completely improper. And Judge Chutkin says, fine, I'm going to allow you to file. Ordinarily, motions have to be 45 pages maximum. His is 185 pages, mostly exhibits and evidence. And she's going to allow him to file it under seal, but she may unseal it before the election. I predict that she will. And she's doing it to 2 reasons: to spit in the face of the United States Supreme Court and say, screw you, I'm going to affect the election anyway. And number 2, to screw Donald Trump. Judge Chutkin is an outrageous abuser of the federal judicial authority. She should be impeached. Her conduct is absolutely disgraceful. I'm embarrassed as a lawyer in the District of Columbia that a judge could be so vituperative in her language about the president and by indirection about the Supreme Court of the United States. I hope it goes back up no matter how long it takes. And when the Supreme Court sends it back down for further hearings, because they're going to reverse her no matter what she finds and the D.C. Circuit finds, and removes her from the case.
Joe diGenova, legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia, and we're well aware at this hour at 7:16 that there are children in the backseat of cars on their way to school. Boys and girls, the word for the day, vituperative.
Vituperative.
Vituperative. Use that in a sentence. You will impress all of your classmates. Thank you, Joe.
And if you use it, you will avoid episodic rhapsody.
That's correct. That's the last thing you want. It's 7:17 now, so let's get straight to Jamie Whitten and the teen carpet cleaning traffic. Julie, yesterday was the feast of St. Michael and the Archangels, including Gabriel and Raphael,
Yes, it was.
the archangels who were named in Scripture. And President Trump, who has been increasingly showing, by outward appearances, some interest in the Catholic Church in particular. You know, when he was running for president 8 years ago, famously at Liberty University, he gave a faith-based speech where he referred to 2 Corinthians, which is fine. I've heard some Christians refer to the St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians as 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians walk into a bar, right? But listen, I'm not going to question his faith and what his belief system is, but I think it's fair to say over the course of Donald Trump's lifetime, he didn't really wear his faith on his sleeve.
No.
But lately he certainly, and his wife, by the way, Melania, is a devout Catholic.
Yes.
That is very well known.
One wonders what happens to your mind when you know that someone's out to kill you.
Exactly. And he has been...
one almost did it.
He has been saying that quite a bit, and I certainly wouldn't question such, but beyond just, Christian conversations and relating to our higher being, it's been very specifically Catholic. He tweeted out on what is acknowledged or represented in the Catholic and Orthodox churches as the birthday of Mary, the Mother of God. He tweeted out a thing with Our Lady of Guadalupe and all that. I mean, there's Catholic stuff going on there.
Sure.
So he tweeted out the prayer to St. Michael on his feast day. And it says, St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
We pray this prayer.
Many people
at the
pray
end
on a daily
of
basis.
Every Mass in my parish.
Sure you do.
Yes, at my parish we pray, and many churches do.
So
this is how you end the Mass.
I read the whole prayer here, not to get too Catholic-y on you. I read it because it's important to know what the contents of that prayer are, because Robert Reich, the former labor secretary under Bill Clinton and an increasingly vituperative
good Lord.
Marxist voice on social media, he retweeted this Donald Trump quotation of the prayer of St. Michael and said, Trump increasingly suggests that he is God's chosen instrument of wrath and that his opponents are evil spirits to be cast into hell. If you don't find this terrifying, you're not paying attention. I think he thought Donald Trump invented the prayer of St. Michael.
He has no idea that it was the feast day of St. Michael.
And that this prayer is about 1,000 years old.
Yeah. And that many churches, many Catholic churches say this prayer after every single Mass, Saturday or Sunday. It's so funny. Steve Gutowski, who writes a lot about the Second Amendment, he often writes about how, he'll read a story. He'll often correct these stories. He'll read a story and he can tell the reporter doesn't know anything about guns, right?
Yes.
And it's kind of a fun thing to read because you realize, oh my gosh, the mainstream media have no idea. And I'm just about to bring Molly into this, and Molly Hemingway, who's begging everyone to stop saying mainstream media because it's not mainstream, left-wing media. But Molly often writes about how reporters also know nothing about Christianity.
None.
And on those two subjects, guns and Christianity, reporters are just legendary in their ignorance.
Yes, if Robert Reich, a Harvard professor, I believe, wanted to let the world know how ignorant he was of
he's a college professor.
Basic Christian history and culture, he couldn't have done it better than with that. Meanwhile, there's a trend here, and this is a New York Times article. The headline is The Possible Meanings of a Masculine Religious Revival. But it's more than just the increase of church attendance among men. It's specifically young men.
Yeah.
Get this. Church going is up within Generation Z. That Generation Z is going to church on a regular basis more so than any of the generations before them over the course of the last 4 decades, and it's specifically led by young men. If you have a young man in your life in their 20s, more likely than not, they are now a regular churchgoer. And I'm seeing this personally in my life right now with the young men that I'm surrounded by.
Yeah,
it's really something.
I think young men are really looking for meaning in their life. I think that they live in a culture where they're called toxic for expressing totally normal masculine behaviors. They're told that they're a problem, that they're that having those feelings are a psychological disorder. And every area of pop culture, from television advertisements to characters, even in that SNL skit where Tim Waltz is, of course, a buffoon, but they sort of acted like Kamala was the reasonable one among all these silly men, right? So I think men are looking for meaning. They're looking for purpose in their life. They're looking for depth and something to believe in. So I'm not surprised at all by this.
I'm not either. And I don't think it's also coincidental that when you see these headlines about the increase in young men going to church and increasingly taking their faith seriously, you will also see that young men are looking politically at conservative values, conservative ideas, and voting. Unlike generations before them, most men end up voting Republican or conservative Republican, but not until they're married and start a family and they're in their 30s. These young men are starting in their 20s, and I think the two go hand in hand. And I know we look at everything through a political lens, but if you stop for a moment and look at the future of our nation through a cultural lens, young men taking their faith and their role in the world, in God's plan for our world, more seriously is nothing but a good thing. 724.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:37 here this Monday morning. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company with Larry and Julie. Coming up at 8:05, Jerry Torres running for Congress in the 8th District against Don Beyer. That's all coming up, but let's get right to it here. I'm so excited to talk to Trevor Matich because I, for one, have already cleared space on my mantle for my replica Vince Lombardi trophy for this year's 2025 Super Bowl. Clearly, the Washington Commanders are going to win it in a cakewalk, it looks like. I mean, my gosh, Trevor, this is an astounding couple of games here by this team, and specifically quarterback Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels has been magnificent, Larry, not just the Super Bowl, and we've already given him the WNBA trophy. Make room for the Little League World Series trophy, too. They're 3-1. And I tell you what, a lot of football left to be played, and we joke about that. But how long has it been since there's been this level of hope from fans with this team? They're 3-1, and it looks like they've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's just a puppy.
Yeah, and the way they're doing it, too. I mean, 42 points this week, and combined with last week, I think I saw a stat. This is the first 2 games in a row that the Washington football team, formerly the Redskins, have scored this many points in 2 back-to-back games since 1991, Trevor.
Wow. Yeah, and the thing is, they're just unstoppable. I mean, they went through a stretch of consecutive scoring drives that was more than any NFL team in over 20 years.
Yeah.
They just couldn't be stopped. And the reason is they kept moving the chains, and the reason they kept moving the chains starts with the quarterback.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, Trevor, as a fan, it's a new experience. Every time they had a possession, there's this level of confidence that they're going to move the ball and get a score of some sort. And we have that confidence as fans because clearly the quarterback has that confidence.
Right, and the team has confidence around him. So when you drill into it and you see why they're moving the chains, meaning they're stringing together long drives, first downs, things like that, there's a couple. One is that the offensive line is really coming together. The offensive line dominated this game. And again, it's been a minute since we've been able to really feel confident in that.
Yeah.
And certainly on the ground and through the air, they were great. The skill people are phenomenal. I mean, this group of receivers and running backs make plays, but that plays into the strengths of the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, because he is so good at getting the ball to the open guy and taking what's there, and letting that open guy then catch the ball and turn and gain more yards after the catch, make somebody miss, drag somebody a while, and he's got a lot of guys that can do that. And one of the great things about watching him, when they play Cleveland next week, watch Jaden Daniels, the Washington quarterback, how quickly he gets the ball out of his hands to his outlet. When the pressure starts to arrive, he immediately knows where his answers are. If there's pressure coming from the left, he knows where to go. If there's pressure coming from the middle, he knows what to do. And so it seems like, well, gee, there's guys open everywhere. Well, not necessarily. It's just that when he looks down the field, doesn't see what he likes, he's got a quick release, and he goes so quickly to the guy that can catch the ball and make at least a short gain, and that's how you string together first downs.
Obviously, a lot of attention paid to Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, because he used to be the head coach of the Cardinals. What's different here about Cliff Kingsbury? Because I mean, that was an amazing offensive plan he put together for this game. And is it just that there's something clicking with him and this personnel that he never had when he was the head coach of Arizona?
So I think that's part of it. I think part of it, too, is that there was a learning curve. I mean, he brought something called the air raid offense from college to the NFL, and there are aspects of that work, but there are aspects of that don't. And this is a good hybrid of what he did in college and really what he did in Arizona. For example, one of the features of the air raid offense is crossing routes where a receiver on each side of the ball will go up the field a ways, and then they'll cross to the opposite side of the field. And in doing so, they come very close to one another as they pass. That tends to create traffic jams for the defenders. And if they're in man coverage, sometimes one of those guys is going to come wide open. And if they're not in man coverage, both of those guys are going to have open spaces in the zone. They'll just get to an open space and sit down and wait for the ball. Wow. And so that's kind of a college air raid concept that he has incorporated into this rather than having air raid be the entire thing.
Well, and it's also working because Brian Robinson, in his second year as the running back, seems to really be coming into his own too, and he's getting a lot of yardage when he gets the ball, so you can't just sit back on the pass. You got to play the run. It's clicking, man. So tell me about this Sunday, because we got the Cleveland Browns coming into town, and I get a sense that we're going to see a lot more burgundy and gold than we're used to over in Landover.
Yeah, which is super weird. That's the home field of the Washington Redskins. So we're about to see more fans for the home team than the opposing team. That's kind of weird. Yeah. This will be a good test for this offense to see if they can continue to string together quality performances. But the Cleveland offense is just a mess. It's performing at a level, one of the worst in the league in terms of yards, points, everything else. And I think that the Washington defense is not necessarily a brick wall, but they were against Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. And Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson is a mobile quarterback, has similar problems as Kyler Murray. And so, again, we'll see if the defense can continue to step up as well. They got 4 sacks last week against the Cardinals. So this game will be determined on whether or not the defense of Washington can step up and continue their good performance, because I expect the offense to come down to earth. They can't score 42 points every game, can they?
I mean, what's stopping them? Literally. All right, Trevor. I am sufficiently hyped now. I am sufficiently hyped. I missed the home opener. I was out of town, but I will be there at newly christened Northwest Stadium. I'm still getting used to that for this Sunday's game. Hopefully, I'll see you there, Trevor. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, hopefully so. Yeah, if you've got your phone with the ESPN app, you'll be able to see me right there on your phone. And I want to know from you what the level of Cleveland Brown jerseys is compared to burgundy and gold in the Washington home stadium this week. I want to know that. I want that report.
I will let you know. Absolutely. 100%. Thanks, man. Take care, Trevor.
Thanks, Larry.
It's so fun to have a conversation about our home football team like that instead of the one we've been having for the last 6 years. Ever since Alex Smith broke his leg, it's been downhill. It's your feel-good story of the day. Netflix. You Netflix. So I'm only watching Netflix right now because the Great British Bake Off started again.
Okay.
First episode. Right. That's really the only thing I watch on Netflix. It's annoying. Netflix just saw its most dramatic spike in cancellations in a year. Like tons of people just called in and said, "That's it. I'm canceling Netflix." What happened? The co-founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings, revealed that he donated $7 million to Kamala Harris. And immediately everyone said, "Oh, I'm done with Netflix."
Yeah, I don't watch much on Netflix either. I used to watch The Last Kingdom. I was really into that, but after
And The
that,
Crown.
Well, of course.
I watched The Crown
Yeah,
too,
Crown.
but none of those are Netflix originals, right? Was The Crown
I
Netflix
think,
original?
I think it was, and so was Last Kingdom. I'm
All
pretty
right.
sure.
Well,
Yeah.
you'll be forgiven if you decide that you don't want to have anything to do with it. And I think I can probably get Great British Bake Off elsewhere, I
Yeah.
think, or maybe
Well,
PBS or something.
Netflix needs to understand it used to be the only thing out there, right?
Right.
Lots of choice now. Lots of choice.
Yeah, but sadly, so many of them are just like the co-founder of Netflix, and they'll give their huge donations to the Kamala Harris campaign as well. But there is something very in your face: $7 million.
Yeah.
To the. By the way, how do you donate that much to the campaign? I thought we actually had, campaign finance rules that you can't. But I guess it's to a super PAC of sorts or some other
There are
way
ways
of getting
around
around
it.
those campaign finance. But it is. I mean, they have racked up all of this money from these mega donations. And boy, is it paying. I watched, yesterday was my first day so far this year of being able to just watch NFL all day long. It was the first Sunday I've had where I'm in town and I had nothing going on in my life. But the Kamala Harris ads, mostly from super PACs. But my God, the ads were just relentless and over and over. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that when you just keep showing the same ad over and over again when you're trying to watch a football game, I think it has a negative effect.
Well,
eventually.
I will tell you something about those ads. My husband and I we saw a few of them, and they're all of her with this like Cheshire cat smile on her face. And my husband turned to me and said, there are serious things going on. Why is it just like a comedy sketch for her of these just and insincere smiling?
I don't disagree with that too.
Just seems off-putting.
Yep. But if you're wondering which candidate is the candidate of really, really super rich people and especially elitists in the entertainment industry, well, this $7 million donation from the co-founder of Netflix certainly tells that story. And Netflix took a hit, according to Bloomberg. The single largest drop in cancellations or spike in cancellations, I should say, for Netflix in over a year. 7:53.